Good morning. Happy Friday, everybody. My name is Rabbi Andrew, the Rabbinic Cynic. This is the Friday Erev Shabbat special. I'm going to be talking about what is the difference between happiness and joy? It's a very interesting question that in Judaism, there's two words in Judaism for happiness and joy, right? There's the word simcha, sameach, right? We say chag sameach, right? Happy, to be happy. What does it mean to be happy? And then there's another word that is used in Psalms, and that is the word ashrei, which means joyful. And so you have to ask the question, so what does all of this mean? What does it mean to be joyful? What does it mean to be happy? Are they different? Are they the same? Is one fleeting? Is the other one more permanent? These are ageless questions that human beings have been asking for centuries. And Judaism has a very interesting approach to it. I use this as an opportunity every week. Every Friday, I like to talk about the weekly Torah portion. This week's Torah portion we're in, right? So in Judaism, we separate the 5 books of Moses, right? There are 5 books. There's Genesis, right? Bereshit, Exodus, Shemot, Leviticus, Vayikra, Bamidbar, which numbers, but actually means desert in Hebrew. And then Deuteronomy, which is a word, another word, Greek word, Roman word. But we call it Dvarim in Hebrew, which is a very different meaning. Dvarim means words in the plural, because they're the last words of Moses. And this week's portion is Re'eh. And so we go through every week, we do a different one of these portions, and they break them up so that we get to read and understand, learn the Torah throughout the whole year. And then Simchat Torah comes. Here, that's where I wanted to segue into the word Simcha. Simchat Torah comes where we do this massive celebration, right? If you'd walk into a synagogue, right, there's a story of a new synagogue. This is, Rabbi Sachs brings this up in his article this week on spirituality and on this Torah portion. And he talks about how, in case anyone didn't know, all of the Jews were kicked out of England back in the Middle Ages.
Okay, I found this on the web.
And Siri has something to say about that, apparently so. Siri has something to say about Jews. I'm very curious what Siri has to say about Jews, but that's for another time. One day I'm going to remember to turn my phone off every time. So back to that. So the English, all of the Jews were kicked out of England, partially because they were blamed for the Black Plague, and everything's just going off all at the same time today. Partially because of the Black Plague, and for a number of other reasons of anti-Semitism, a new law that was established. Anyway, so Oliver Cromwell, after the English, during the English Revolution, there was an English Revolution. Americans didn't maybe not know that. We had a revolution. We changed the constitutional role of the monarchy. Oliver Cromwell was somewhat of a dictator, but the one thing he did do was he allowed the Jews to come back into England. So the story goes, the first synagogue that was established after that, right? Talking the 17th century here. First synagogue that was established was in somebody's house, and someone came to visit, hadn't been before, and it was a very strange time. And he walks in and he sees everybody's dancing for joy, and they're drinking, and it's just a joyous festival. And you imagine this must be what it's like every day. And it turns out that he came on Simchat Torah. He came on the day where we celebrate the completion of the Torah every year, the completion of reading of the Torah every year. And so he asked that question, what is this? What is the idea of simcha, right? The idea of happiness. After all, this was kind of a difficult time, right? They're just finally able to come back and they're able to worship publicly or to worship as Jews again. And you know, the old adage goes on what are Jewish holidays, right? Jewish holidays are, and the joke, it's not a joke, but it's kind of the way we look at life, is that there's a holiday, right? They tried to kill us. They didn't succeed. Let's eat and drink. That sums up most of the Jewish holidays, except maybe Yom Kippur, because we don't eat or drink on Yom Kippur. But Yom Kippur is also considered a time of celebration, a time of simcha, because it represents a time where we come closer to God. Right? So that's the idea of simcha. Simcha, that kind of happiness. Happiness can be momentary, right? We talk about it in political terms, right? America was founded on this idea of the pursuit of happiness. So what does that exactly mean? What does that exactly mean? That means finding happiness in our situation, finding a way of life that gives us happiness. Whether that happiness, and I think that's one of the differences between the word what happy means, right? I'm happy right now, right? I'm happy right now because I'm talking to you guys on camera. Maybe I'll get a little not as happy so that's the word simcha. Maybe so we pick these moments out to find happiness, to celebrate, to be happy. But then there's another idea, and that idea is this concept of joy. What does joy really mean? Now, King David, we know, wrote all of the Psalms, most of the Psalms. There's some debates over which of the Psalms that he didn't write. But that's another question. But one of the most famous Psalms is Ashrei. And that's another word, but it doesn't mean happiness. Ashrei means joy or gratitude. And joy is something completely different, right? You can find joy through suffering. Joy is finding the light in the darkness. And that is, I think, a very powerful lesson that Rabbi Sachs is bringing out in his understanding, because the word simcha is brought up 12 times, more times than any time in Deuteronomy, in Dvarim. It's mentioned more times than anywhere else. We see it throughout the Torah when it refers to holidays, but the idea of simcha, the idea of joy, these are two competing ideas, this is right. One, momentary aspect of happiness, and another is joy, where we look to find the elements of gratitude in our life, in the darkness of our life. And that's this idea of the Jewish holidays. The Jewish holidays is that, yes, we suffered, we figured out a way to overcome, and then we find the joy. Then we go and we have a party, we drink, we have a nice meal. If you don't drink, you have a nice glass of grape juice or whatever else it is. But we find ways to find the half full attitude of life rather than the half empty way of life. And I think that's a very important when you understand suffering. When we go through our own lives of suffering, Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor, founded a whole school of thought in psychology, and discovered that many of those that survived the Holocaust, that survived the concentration camps, were able to do so because they were able to find the meaning. They found purpose and meaning in the suffering that they experienced, unimaginable suffering that they experienced. So, and a lot of them found that through the history of our people, through the history of our faith, that through Jewish history, that we've overcome through that joyousness. You see the images. There's this idea that Jerusalem for Jews is a place that we experience that kind of joy because it's the closest that we come to God. But if you look back at images during the founding of the State of Israel in 1948, right? When the United Nations voted to establish the State of Israel, Everyone was dancing in the streets in Tel Aviv and everywhere. They were dancing for joy everywhere. At the same time, knowing and understanding that all of the Arab armies were coming to destroy them. Sirens were actually going off while they were dancing, and that kind of joy, amidst the knowledge that there will be suffering, is an attribute that I believe has kept the Jewish people alive for the millennia that we have experienced all of the different tragedies that we've experienced. Now, I'm going to segue to an interesting. CNN just did an interesting. Had a show on anti-Semitism. I myself never watched it, but this is an anecdote from somebody that my wife ran into on a walk, and this is someone who is probably not had a lot of contact with Jewish people. Very nice lady, and she a couple of months ago, there was another series about the state of Israel that she came out and told us about. Oh, we didn't really know that Israel has really been fighting for their survival since 1948, or the history behind the founding of the state of Israel, or the Holocaust itself. And we're nodding, and this one talked about anti-Semitism. And she pointed out to my wife, well, how does it feel that everyone throughout all these centuries has been trying to kill you? And my wife was like, well, I didn't really think about it too much. It's just, that's kind of we understand that as a fact of life. Those of us from Europe, or those of us that have lived in Israel, it's even more apparent the attempted to kill us. Why is it different in the United States? Why was it surprising to this in the Coachella Valley to our neighbor? Ironically enough, it's because Jews appear like everybody else. America is quite a wonderful melting pot of different people. But I wanted to say, to be honest with you, I wanted to say, well, are you surprised? That's how minorities of color feel every day. So it was surprising to her that us as a white minority, because a lot of Jews in America are white, which is actually, there are plenty of Jews of color in America as well, that's a whole nother subject. But to find it hard to believe that we would experience that kind of, that's what they then wanted to kill us, right? We know that. If the FBI is the biggest threat to the Jewish community, is not from Islamic terrorism. Actually, it's from fascism and right wing Nazi extremists, white supremacists. Right, that's the biggest threat to the Jewish community. So when you look at it in those terms, you realize that, and that's not just a threat to the Jewish community. That's a threat to all of these communities. Right, and so we look. As a musician, I look at blues. And blues is a beautiful example of that joy that the African American slaves forced from their homes in Africa. That they were able to find that joy in the music to overcome their suffering, and they brought that in, and that music found its way into it was rock and roll. It came into all popular music that we see today, and that joy, that music that takes us somewhere else, but it came out of suffering. The blues came out of that kind of suffering, in the same way that Jewish music, the way that we celebrate our suffering, we find the half fullness in our suffering, that the light at the end of the tunnel in our suffering. This is a common thread that we find in a lot of people, not just Jews, and so I want to acknowledge that and recognize that we each find in our own unique way, in our own unique culture. So all of you, I want you to have a wonderful, joyous Shabbat, joyous weekend, and also find the simcha and find the happiness. And that's when you have those gratitude checks. It's like, not what I don't have, but what do I have, right? Even if it might be really hard to look at. So I'm going to segue now to a different topic. I think it's wonderful, the whole student loans, right? Student loans have been forgiven. Isn't that amazing? Up to $10,000 if you earn $120,000 a year. There's also loan forgiveness, and there's a public service announcement. Any of you students out there or people with student debt, make sure that you get that and you're entitled to that. Because I think that's a very important step that Joe Biden has made, that the government did this year. That they've forgiven student debt. There shouldn't be, the prices of education should not be what they are, right? Education should be merit-based. It shouldn't be, I can get into, I can only go there if I got so much money. Yes, there are scholarships, but it really should be a merit-based system. America is trailing so far behind in education. When we are not, America is not the bastion of education it used to be. Not saying that the educational system in America is bad, but there are other places now that are catching up. And if you want to be educated in America, if you're an American citizen, if you want to be educated here, or certain people end up with debilitating debts throughout their working career. So it doesn't, and it disproportionately hurts minorities at the same time. So this forgiveness of student debt, I think, is a wonderful step in the right direction that I believe will go a long way. Hopefully, this will continue, and that brings me to the fiasco. I know I was going to talk about it a few days ago. Mar-a-Lago, right? We talk about that. Right, Trump running in 2024. Did the FBI raid empower Trump to win? Is he in legal trouble? Right, these are all questions that we're trying to ask ourselves. Right, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Is there going to be a sweep in 2022 of the Republicans, or has some of these strides that has Roe versus Wade empower the Democratic base? The other question is, should there be a rematch in 2024? That's another question, right? Should Joe Biden retire? Should he step down, allow the next generation to come forward? Or is he the only one that can defeat Donald Trump if Donald Trump does indeed become the nominee? But what if someone like DeSantis becomes the nominee, right? So if you're a Democrat, you're gonna think, was Joe Biden too, DeSantis, ticks a lot of the boxes in terms of the Republican nomination. He appears a lot less like a nutcase than Donald Trump. So there's that concern as well if you're a Democrat. So maybe should Joe Biden as I've been saying, there needs to be a change in leadership. The younger generation we need to accept that. Not we, because I guess I'm the younger generation, but millennials and us Xers, right? I as much as I love you baby boomers and of course the greatest generation, maybe it is time for the younger generations to start fixing the problems with society, the systemic issues in our political system, the deadlocks in the United States Senate. These are all things that need to be solved. So is a rematch in 2024 just going to be another distraction? Is it going to change anything? Is it going to put Trump back into office? Think about another 4-year term of Donald Trump, the way he was in his first 4 years. And I want people that think he was a great president. There are some good things that the Trump presidency did, I think, in terms of Israel, for example, might be one that you can get on that one. That's a discussion for another time. I'm putting that off. I don't want. But there are other there were other accomplishments. The vaccine was an unprecedented time that prevented a lot of people from dying of COVID, right? That was achieved during his presidency. So you can't just kind of throw it out there because you don't like his personality. Right? So I'm trying to be balanced. I'm trying to be cynical here about this, right? Whether I personally like him or not, right? That's I have to recognize why some people do like him. Some people I respect and do like him. I have to I want to understand that, and I think that when you keep that open mind, you've got to recognize from other people's perspectives, right? And I think that's the key. That's the problem with our political system right now, is we're not really seeing other people's perspectives, and we need to open up our minds to other people's perspectives, whether or not we find them abhorrent or not. right? And that's the true idea of love. I keep going back to this, is that love means I love you unconditionally. And we're all in this together, we're all on this planet together, and we look forward to that beautiful Star Trek universe where we can be all in this together. But you know, there are lights. We see these lights at the end of the tunnel. These lights where people do come together, and it's on a community level, and this is where it can happen on that community level, where we find that common discourse, that common dialogue. So when I say Rematch 2024, Rematch, right, implies it's a fight. Should it really be a fight, or should it be that we're walking off for a common goal? We're trying to find a common way into the future to solve these critical issues for our future that are not going away, right? California, 2020, 2035, you better get yourself, you can't buy a gas vehicle anymore. It's going to become more difficult to get gas, maybe, right? There's going to be electric stations over in California. Does that mean I'm going to get a free Tesla? I never would buy a Tesla. I think they're cool cars. I have my own issues with Tesla just personally because of an accident I once described. But if the state of California wants to give me a free Tesla by 2035, so if you're listening out there and you're in the government and you're about this, I drive an old 2014 Subaru. I love my Subaru, but if I'm going to have to buy a new car in 2035, and please God, I'll live that long to see that, please think of me, and a Model S would be fine. But any other electric vehicle would be great. If you want to give it to us free, that'd be awesome. I know, I'm just kidding. But, again, it's a move in the right direction. Will it actually succeed, right? That's another question. I think they should be investing in high-speed rail networks across California. That should really be something that they invest in. Why keep on this reliance on everyone having their own vehicle, right? That's also a question that we should be asking, right? Why are we so behind? You go around the rest of the world, Japan, Europe. I mean, the rail system in this country is so antiquated, right? I mean, you sit on the train, it's just like you're trundling along. It's like I grew up in a city with a subway, and I grew up in in England where there's rail is like gets you places pretty fast. And they have bullet trains, and they have underground. You can get to Europe in a really fast train. Bullet trains. We got the technology. We have the technology, right? You know what, the Bionic Man, right? So yes, I think it's great. Electric vehicles, move to the future, combat climate change, but at the same time, what about building an infrastructure where we can have a real good system of public transportation where we don't have to have gridlock? Because an electric car is not going to change a gridlock on the roads in Los Angeles or in New York or in San Francisco. It's not going to change that. It's going to be just as bad, right? So I say good on you, California, for trying to make a difference, but at the same time, invest in bullet trains or maybe mass flying trains, flying, right? Flying's become so bad, right? Why don't we fix that system as well? All these horror stories about people not being able to get around, being able to get to their destinations, disabled people being left at airports for hours, right? The airlines were bailed out, but at the same time, but now they're not accountable for anything, right? Right. So let's figure out better ways of getting ourselves around this country. It's a huge country, but it's a step in the right direction. So on that note, I wish you joyfulness and happiness. We can see the difference, right? You should be happy, and then you should find joy in the adversity, and you should find joy in everything that you do. Wish you a wonderful, beautiful weekend. I'll see you again on Monday at 8:30. Live long and prosper. And for those of you who observe Shabbat Shalom. And I will see you on the other side. Bye.